I'm Alma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of the pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. Here are tonight's news. First to Hong Kong, a man accused of deliberately driving his motorbike into a group of police officers became the first person in Hong Kong to be charged under Beijing's sweeping new national security law. Tong Ying Kit, 23 years old, was hit with one charge of inciting secession and one charge of terrorism, according to a court document obtained by AFP. A police source said Tong drove his motorbike into a group of police officers on Wednesday during protests against the security law. The source asked for anonymity in order to be able to speak freely. An earlier police statement gave the suspect's age as 24. Tong was arrested on Wednesday when thousands defied a ban on rallies to protest against Beijing's new law, which was imposed a day earlier and has swiftly begun curtailing some political freedoms. Video footage earlier captured by local television that day showed a man on an orange motorbike with a flag that declared "Liberate Hong Kong, Revolution of Our Lives" on the back. And he turned down a side street and drove into a group of riot police. Bystander footage shot on a mobile phone captured the scene moments later, where the man was swiftly detained after he fell to the ground. Police at the time said 3 officers were wounded, and Tong was not in court to hear the charges. A defense barrister said he remained in hospital with a fracture. The charge sheet said Tong incited other persons to commit secession and that his offense constituted terrorism because it was aimed at coercing the Chinese and Hong Kong governments and intended to cause grave harm to society. Beijing's new security law was kept secret until it was enacted, sending fear coursing through the city both for how it was imposed and the strangling of free speech provisions it contains. It outlaws various acts viewed as subversion, secession, terrorism, and colluding with foreign forces, but legal experts warn it also proscribes even peaceful political views. The terrorism offenses are broad and include attacks on vehicles or transport networks and using dangerous methods to seriously endanger public health or safety. Tong Ying Kit's lawyer told press that he was hit with one charge of inciting secession and one charge of terrorism, and he's still being treated in hospital. Now let's take a listen.
My client has just been charged of the 2 offenses under the new national security law. Namely, the first one is sedition to secession. The second one is terrorist acts. And my client is still being treated in the hospital, and therefore the case has been adjourned until next Monday. Thank you. Thank you for concern.
A police source said Mr. Tong drove his motorbike into a group of police officers during protests against the security law. And video footage captured earlier by local television that day showed that a man on an orange motorbike with a flag that declared "Liberate Hong Kong, Revolution of Our Times" on the back, he turned down a side street and drove into a group of riot police. The charge against him, as shown in a court document on Friday, comes less than 24 hours after the city's government said the protest slogan "Liberate Hong Kong, Revolution of Our Times" connotes separatism or subversion under the new law. The new legislation was signed into law by President Xi Jinping and came into effect on Tuesday night. Meanwhile, China appointed a hardliner known for stamping out protests on the mainland as the head of Hong Kong's new security agency, according to state media, days after imposing a sweeping law on the territory that criminalizes dissent. Zheng Yanzhong will take the helm of the controversial National Security Agency set up under the legislation that empowers mainland security agents to operate inside Hong Kong openly for the first time, unbound by the city's laws. The office, which has investigative and prosecutory powers, will monitor intelligence related to national security and process cases in some circumstances, handing them over to mainland authorities. Zhang rose through the ranks of the local government in southern Guangdong province, which borders Hong Kong, to serve as Secretary General of the Provincial Communist Party Committee. The 56-year-old is known as a hardliner who stamped out often violent anti-corruption protests that erupted in Wukan, a village in the province, in 2011. Hong Kong was rocked by several months of huge and sometimes violent pro-democracy protests last year, a movement which Beijing is keen to suppress through the new law. On that same day, the State Council also named Lu Weining, currently director of Beijing's liaison office in the semi-autonomous city, as the National Security Advisor to the city's newly formed National Security Commission, chaired by Chief Executive Carrie Lam. The State Council on Thursday also appointed veteran Hong Kong official Eric Chan Kwok Ki as the Commission's Secretary General. The commission, also created by the new law, will oversee policy formulation relating to the national security law in Hong Kong. Chan previously served as the director of Hong Kong's Chief Executive's Office, before which he was territory's head of immigration. The chairman of the Hong Kong Bar Association urged the authority to clarify over the sweeping new security laws application in the city, especially over the reservation of Chinese jurisdiction and political speeches, after the group warned that the legislation dismantles the legal firewall that has existed between Hong Kong's independent judiciary and China's Communist Party-controlled courts since the 1997 handover. Take a look.
So it's quite a seismic shock to the system to think that this conduct, which was putting aside the violent conduct, but the action of the protesters last year was totally lawful. May have been boisterous, may have offended some people, but it was totally lawful. Now it's criminal. Overnight. The one that would worry most people, I think, is the reservation of some cases that will be dealt with in the mainland. And the criteria for identifying those cases is very general. Something like very difficult cases, or cases not suitable for being dealt with in Hong Kong. You have to know what that is. Most serious cases are like these, and I say, you give examples, so people then know, well, if I do that kind of activity, I could be on a one-way journey to the mainland. This law doesn't address social media, but I can see how some people are apprehensive because they don't know whether or not it will be covered. Like I said, you need to tell people what kind of political speech, that's what we're talking about, political speech, is no longer considered to be acceptable. And in fact, because of that lack of acceptability, is now unlawful and criminal. Extraterritorial law applying to the world and everybody in the world is grossly exorbitant jurisdiction, and I do not see that it will have any practical effect, save that it does. And this may be the effect of the legislation, cause fear. And that may be the real concern. We have now two parallel criminal procedure systems. We have these new offences, and along with them, there's special rules as to how they're handled, investigated, how they're tried, and how you'll be sentenced. Running alongside, as I say, the normal system. And you can say that it's kind of two kinds of software. And are they actually compatible?
The U.S. House of Representatives unanimously passed a sanctions bill to penalize China for imposing a strict new security law in Hong Kong. Now, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi reacted.
And yesterday, we passed Hong Kong Autonomy Act, which had already passed the Senate, and that is to help end China's campaign of cruelty against Hong Kong. You've heard me say it again and again. If we don't speak out against violations of human rights in China because of commercial interest, we lose all moral authority to speak out against human rights violations any place in the world for it. But if you saw the security, so-called national security, what it is suppression of any expression in Hong Kong. It really sad. So I'm disappointed, obviously, in the arrest of anyone who's speaking out peacefully for democratic freedoms wherever it is. In terms of refugee, I'm not familiar with that, but those people would qualify because they have, by this law, a well-founded fear of persecution in the place of origin from which they would come. So they would qualify on that score. I would rather we could make it right in Hong Kong so that that place of such entrepreneurship and dynamism and spirit of democracy.
President Trump has not said if he will sign the bill, but one of his allies briefly held up the Senate version, seeking changes. President Trump publicly hesitated last year before signing another rights bill on Hong Kong, which also lays out sanctions against Chinese officials for infringing on the city's autonomy. Unlike the previous act, the new legislation would make sanctions mandatory, limiting President Trump's ability to waive them. In a crucial pressure point, it would also slap sanctions on banks that conduct transactions with violators. Under a deal ahead of the 1997 handover from Britain, authoritarian China guaranteed Hong Kong civil liberties as well as judicial and legislative autonomy until 2047 in a formula known as one country, two systems. China said the new law doesn't damage the territory's rights, but will restore stability after months of pro-democracy unrest. In Japan, Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi said it is regrettable that China imposed a national security law on Hong Kong and that Japan will analyze the city's status as the international financial hub.
全事態の常務委員会におきまして、国際社会や香港市民の強い懸念にもかかわらず、香港における国家安全法が制定されたことは遺憾であります。香港は我が国にとって緊密な経済関係及び人的交流を有する極めて重要なパートナーでありまして、一国二制度のもとに自由で開かれた体制が維持をされ、民主的安定的に発展していくことが重要であるというのが我が国の一貫した立場であります。今後、香港のですね、国際金融センターとしてのですね、地位というものがどうなっていくのかと、そこに集まっている優秀な人材というのがどういうことを考えているのかと、こういったこともよく分析した上で適切に対応していきたいと思っております。
The foreign minister noted that about 26,000 Japanese citizens live in Hong Kong, while 1,400 Japanese companies are active there. Lawmakers in Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's ruling Liberal Democratic Party, or LDP, have drafted a resolution calling for the cancellation of a state visit by Chinese President Xi Jinping following China's clampdown on Hong Kong. Now, if the proposal is approved at party meetings next week, it could be submitted to the Prime Minister's office as soon as Tuesday, according to lawmaker Yasuhide Nakayama, who heads an LDP foreign policy panel. In other news, President Duterte has signed the anti-terrorism bill into law. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque made the confirmation in a statement on Friday. According to Secretary Roque, the President signed Republic Act number 11479, which effectively replaces the Human Security Act of 2007 after taking the time to study it together with his legal team and weighing the concerns of different stakeholders. Prior to its passage, some sectors, including activists, already denounced the bill, saying it could be used to stifle dissent. They, in particular, criticized the detention period of up to 14 days without charges against suspected terrorists allowed under the measure, among others. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, had also asked the president not to sign the bill, citing concerns about what she said was, quote, the blurring of important distinctions between criticism, criminality, and terrorism. Former law enforcers such as Senators Ping Lacson and Bato de la Rosa, both former Philippine National Police chiefs, and current law officers or enforcers, however, hailed the bill, saying it would give teeth to the then anti-terrorism law and it would protect the rights of lawmen when dealing with suspected terrorists. Secretary Roque also told Bachelet some countries had more draconian terrorism laws, such as the United States. He also said terrorism, after all, quote, strikes anytime and anywhere. In India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi made a surprise visit to the northern frontier region with China on Friday in his first trip to the area since a deadly border clash last month. Now, the incident in the Galwan Valley saw 20 Indian troops killed and was the first time in 45 years that soldiers had died in combat on the Asian giant's long-disputed Himalayan border. Prime Minister Modi toured a military base at Nimu in Ladakh, about 100 kilometers, as the crow flies from the site of the June 15 battle. He was due to go to a military hospital in nearby Leh to meet soldiers injured in the hand-to-hand skirmish, according to a security source. The head of India's military and the army chief also joined the visit to the sensitive area, which has been used as a staging post to build up troop numbers in the region. China also suffered casualties but has not given details. During the melee, both sides have blamed each other for the incident and since sent thousands of extra troops to the region. In other news, starting this July 10, religious gatherings will be allowed in areas under General Community Quarantine or GCQ, but only up to 10% of the worship service venue's seating capacity, according to Malacanang. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque made the announcement of what had been approved in the latest interagency task force on emerging infectious diseases meeting the previous day in the regular Laging Handa televised briefing. Take a look.
Pinayagan din po ang religious gatherings, no? Pero hanggang 10% lang po, no? At ito po ay epektibo sa July 10, 2020 sa areas na GCQ. Siyempre po sa areas na MGCQ, patuloy yung 50%. Magkakaroon muna po tayo ng dry run, no? Na 10% itong mga darating na linggo, no? Pero yung 10% po na allowed na ang lahat ay magsisimula po yan ng July 10. Importante po na sundin natin ang mga minimum public health standards tulad ng social distancing, pagsusuot ng face masks at iba pa. Naapruban din po ang Phase 2 ng National Action Plan ng NTF. Ano po ba ang mga features nito, no? Itataguyod po natin ang pagbabago ng pag-iisip ng mga tao kung saan ang focus ay kalusugan at pag-iwas sa sakit. Babalansehin po natin ng layunin ang pagkalusugan at pang-ekonomiya. Ibig sabihin po talaga, bagamat importante na protektahan pa rin natin ang ating mga sarili laban sa COVID-19, napatunayan naman po natin na meron na mga pamamaraan para labanan ng COVID-19. Kasama na po dyan ang pagsusuot ng face mask, ang social distancing at ang paghuhugas ng kamay. No? Sasamahan din po natin yan ng granular lockdowns at saka siyempre po, kasama na rin dyan yung paintingin pa natin yung testing, tracing, isolation, and treatment.
The IATF also approved the recommendation of the Departments of Tourism and Trade and Industry to allow travel agencies to resume operations in areas under GCQ. Take a look.
Kinakailangan na po talagang buksan ng ekonomiya dahil kinakailangan na nating magkaroon ng hanap buhay muli. At kasama na nga rin po dyan yung unti-unting pagbubukas ng turismo sa mga lugar na NGCQ dahil napakadami pong mga trabaho na nakasalalay dyan sa turismo. Now, na-approvean din po yung request ng mga turista, yung mga travel agencies na magbukas dahil ang dami nga po humihingi ng mga refunds, no? Pero ang decision po, dapat skeleton force lang po. Now, isa pa po, kung kayo po ay addict sa mga beauty parlors, not barbero, tinanggal na po ang clause na limited to basic hair cutting services para sa barbero at salon sa guidelines sa mga lugar na nasa GCQ. Pero wag muna kayo masyadong maging excited dyan. Maglalabas pa po muna ang DTI ng guidelines para sa unting-unting pagbalik ng mga serbisyo at binibigay ng mga ganitong establishmento na pinapayagan ng minimum public health standards. So, yung mga pedicure, manicure, antayin muna po ang guidelines. Bagamat in principle, papayagan po yan, antayin lang natin ang guidelines ng DTI. At ang una-unang kung tatanungin kay Secretary Lopez, paano po yung mga masahe sa mga barbero? Pwede na ba ho yan? Antayin po natin ang guidelines ng DTI.
To Japan now, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government confirmed 107 new COVID-19 infections in the capital, marking the highest daily increase in 2 months. Joining us live from Japan is our EBC correspondent, Dennis Liu. Hello, Dennis.
Hello, Alma. Good evening.
Good evening.
Tokyo government official confirmed 124 corona-infected cases today, Friday, and another 107 infections on Thursday, the highest number that was registered in 2 consecutive days. The capital, Tokyo, with 14 million population, had initially aimed to monitor daily cases fewer than 20 after the government lifted the state of emergency on May 25th, but consistently exceeded 50 over the past few weeks. Tokyo's daily count reached 100 on May 2nd, Wednesday, where 67 new cases were confirmed. Many among the infected are young people in their 20s and 30s that have visited the nightlife areas in the capital. Currently, they remain asymptomatic and no new patients were reported to have developed serious medical conditions. Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said, and I quote, "We continue to pay attention to the infection situation in the area with a sense of urgency and work to both prevent the spreading of infection and support economic activity," he mentioned. A growing public concern was seen in various workplaces and elderly care facilities about the resurgence and the rapid spread of corona infections in the capital and nearby prefectures in Kanto area. Governor Yuriko Koike said that patients are increasing not only in nightlife districts, bars, but other establishments with hospitality services and other places as well. Despite the increasing number of cases in Tokyo, with 19,000 cases and 976 deaths, it was still lower compared to the overall rate of infection in many countries. More than 10.7 million people have been reported to be infected globally, and more than 550,000 have died based on a Reuters tally. Tokyo government recently said it would mainly depend on expert advice and healthcare systems to contain the virus rather than just depending on the number of infections before coming up into various conclusions, like, for example, if business closures would be necessary or not. Tokyo has also revised the city's guidelines on monitoring the ongoing spread of COVID-19 virus. Back to you, Alma, at the studio.
Okay. Dennis, also, I heard that Fujifilm Corporation has also signed an agreement with an Indian pharmaceutical to develop COVID-19 treatment drug.
Yes, Alma. Fujifilm Corporation did sign an agreement with India's Dr. Reddy's Laboratories Limited and Dubai-based Global Response Aid, a company that provides global medical supplies, granting them exclusive rights to develop, produce, and sell its potential COVID-19 treatment drug, Avigan, overseas. Fujifilm will receive a lump sum license fee and royalties on sales of Avigan, also known as Favipiravir, currently undergoing clinical testing as a possible coronavirus treatment drug in Japan. Fujifilm also said it will grant Dr. Reddy's the right to use African production patents so that the Indian drug maker can supply GRA's global sales network swiftly and stably. Atigan has yet to be approved by the Japanese government for COVID-19 treatment, with clinical testing delayed due to insufficient enrollment. The Japanese government gave up on its target for approval of the drug in May after an interim analysis of an clinical study being conducted by a team led by Kita Health University did not show clear efficacy in treating the disease. As Atigan can inhibit the replication of the novel coronavirus in cells, experts say it may bring about improvements in infected patients.
All right. Thank you very much, Dennis, for your updates there in Japan. Happy weekend and do take care.
There, Alma, reporting live from Tokyo, Japan. This is Dennis for Eagle News. We live in residence.
Eagle News, we'll be right back.
Noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
The British government revealed the first exemptions from its coronavirus quarantine. To tell us more, joining us live is Love Ann Season. Hello, Love Ann.
Hi, Alma. Thank you for having me. So here's the latest. So here's the latest in the United Kingdom. The British government today revealed the first exemptions from its coronavirus quarantine, with arrivals from Germany, France, Spain and Italy no longer required to self-isolate from July 10. But in a potentially confusing move, the exemptions applied to countries considered to have a low risk of COVID-19 will only apply to arrivals into England. Those arriving into other parts of the UK, like Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland, will still have to self-quarantine for 14 days or face a fine. Britain has suffered the deadliest coronavirus outbreak in Europe, with at least 44,000 dead, but infection rates are falling, and it is gradually easing a 3-month lockdown. Since June 8, it has required all overseas arrivals, including UK residents, to self-quarantine to avoid the risk of importing new cases from abroad. The move sparked outrage from the airlines already struggling with the effects of global coronavirus shutdown, as well as mutual moves by other countries. Aware of the many Brits who want to travel abroad this summer, the government said Friday it expected countries on the exempt list to lift any restrictions on UK travelers. However, it indicated that talks on securing this reciprocal action were still ongoing. Today marks the next step in carefully reopening our great nation, Transport Secretary Grant Shapps said in a statement. Whether you are a holiday maker ready to travel abroad or a business eager to open your doors again, this is good news for British people and great news for British businesses. He said the exempt list would be kept under review, saying, "We will not hesitate to move quickly to protect ourselves if infection rates rise in countries we are reconnecting with." A longer list of countries that will be exempt is expected to be published later Friday, with news reports suggesting as many as 75 countries might be on it. The Foreign Office also said that from July 4, it would be exempting low-risk countries from its advice warning against all but essential travel overseas. All passengers arriving in the UK, except those on a small list of exemptions, will still be required to provide authorities with contact information. Those who have traveled through non-exempt countries in the preceding weeks will still have to self-isolate. Now, Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government had been expected to announce the quarantine exemptions earlier this week, but ministers hinted at disagreements with the devolved administration in Scotland. So Edinburgh, Cardiff, and Belfast would set out their own approach to exemptions, the UK government said Friday. Back to you, Alma.
All right, Lovan, can you tell us what are the new quarantine rules now in the United Kingdom?
Well, according to the BBC, at the moment, passengers arriving in the UK by plane, ferry, or train need to provide an address where they will self-isolate for 14 days. They can be fined £100 or $124 for failing to fill in a form with these details. This also applies to UK nationals. Now, 1 in 5 eligible passengers will be contacted to see if they are abiding by these rules, and those in England could be fined up to £1,000 or $1,240 if they don't self-isolate. So as of June 26, no one has been fined yet by Border Force, while details of fines from police haven't been issued yet. Now, also, passengers should drive their own car to their destination where possible. If they don't give an address, the government will be the one to organize where they will be staying at the traveler's expense. Once at their destination, they are not allowed to use the public transport or taxis. They must not go to work, school, or public areas or accept visits from people except for essential support. They are also not allowed to go out to buy food or other essentials where they can rely on other people. Now, people coming back from overseas will not be automatically eligible for statutory sick pay, except if they meet the required conditions, like displaying coronavirus symptoms as an example. Alma?
All right. Thank you very much, Van, for your updates there in the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Alma. I'm Love and Susan reporting live from London, United Kingdom. We live in interesting times.
To Switzerland, the Geneva Motor Show is canceled due to the coronavirus. Joining us live from Geneva is Jim Hipólito. Hello, Jim.
Good evening, Alma.
Good evening.
Yes, you're right. Organizers said they were also scrapping the 2021 edition as the auto sector reels from the crisis. The executive committee of the foundation that runs the Geneva International Motor Show said that after calling exhibitors, it had given up the idea to organize a 2021 edition. The Geneva International Motor Foundation noted the auto sector was currently facing a major crisis and exhibitors need time to be able to invest in the show. It also pointed out that it was unclear whether the health and safety situation next March would allow for the organization of an event that usually draws more than 600,000 visitors and 10,000 journalists. This year's edition was canceled after Switzerland banned large gatherings before introducing stricter lockdown measures to fight the novel coronavirus. Switzerland, like other European countries, lifted many of those measures, but still has restrictions on large gatherings. The foundation said that back in March, it had asked the Canton of Geneva to provide financial support to help cover 11 million Swiss francs, 11.6 million in US dollars or 10.3 million euros. It lost when the 2020 edition was canceled at the last minute and to help prepare for next year's shows. The Geneva International Motor Show is the largest public event organized in Switzerland and usually fills the Geneva region's coffers with around 200 million francs each year. Alma?
All right. Thank you very much for your updates there, Jim. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Alma. Reporting live from Geneva, Switzerland, this is Jim Hipólito, and we live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, the land border between Spain and Portugal reopened with a symbolic gathering of leaders. Joining us live from Spain is Mark Julius Aala. Hello, Julius.
Hello. Spain and Portugal reopened their shared border, which has been closed since March 16, as Lisbon sought to protect itself from the new cases that were exploding across Spain. With its only land border closed for more than 3 months, Portugal has weathered the epidemic better than its neighbor. 1,576 deaths from 42,141 cases compared with Spain's 28,355 deaths from almost 250,000 cases. But both countries are struggling with fresh outbreaks since the lockdown ended. On Wednesday, Lisbon reimposed a partial lockdown, ordering some 700,000 people in several impoverished neighborhoods in the north of the capital to stay at home. In these areas, local organizations have said residents were never properly able to respect the initial lockdown, many having to work and take public transport. Meanwhile, Spanish regions are closely watching around 50 separate outbreaks, which in most cases are limited to just a handful of people. A reopening ceremony was presided over by King Felipe VI and Portugal President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, accompanied by Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez and his Portuguese counterpart Antonio Costa. They were all wearing masks. The easing of traffic restrictions between the two countries will be a relief for traders, particularly in Portugal. The reopening of the Spain-Portugal border comes in time for the summer holiday period, when many Spanish tourists travel to beaches in the neighboring country for vacation. Now with this comes some safety measures. Spain will ask all tourists to complete health forms before traveling to the country in order to make it easier to locate their contacts in the case of a contagion. That's according to an order published in the official state gazette or BOE on Wednesday. Now these forms will ask travelers for their contact address in Spain, previous travel experiences, and whether they are suffering from coronavirus-related symptoms in a bid to prevent imported cases. The renewed order comes after the European Council formally agreed on Tuesday to an initial safe list of 14 countries for which they will allow non-essential travel from July. The countries are Algeria, Australia, Canada, Georgia, Japan, Montenegro, Morocco, New Zealand, Rwanda, Serbia, South Korea, Thailand, Tunisia, and Uruguay. Alma?
All right. Thank you very much for your updates there in Spain, Julius.
Thank you very much. This is Mark Julius Aala from EBC Madrid Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
And the Prime Minister of France, Edouard Philippe, has resigned after seeing the country through the coronavirus pandemic. The Élysée Palace announced that Prime Minister Philippe, an increasingly popular figure during the crisis, had submitted the government's resignation but would remain as head of the interim government until the president, Emmanuel Macron, carries out his reshuffle and names his successor. Joining us live and to tell us that report is Aliyah Garcia. Hello, Aliyah.
Hi, Alma. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you also. The French government, led by Prime Minister Edouard Philippe, submitted its resignation Friday ahead of a cabinet reshuffle to be announced in the coming hours, the presidency said. No reason was given in the short statement, but the shake-up had been widely expected after French President Emmanuel Macron vowed to chart a new course for the last 2 years of his term. Outmounted this week after Macron's centrist party was routed in municipal elections last Sunday, and Greens took control of several major cities. But Philippe, a right-wing politician who never joined Macron's Republic on the Move party, easily won his bid to become a mayor of Le Havre. In theory, Philippe can name a stand-in for the mayor's post so he can remain prime minister, though Macron may prefer to burnish his social justice credentials with a more centrist of left-wing pick. In an interview with regional newspapers publishing late Thursday, Macron said France must prepare for a very difficult economic crisis, so we have to chart a new course. Philippe, 49, was appointed in 2017 after Macron's presidential election victory. At the time, he was a member of the center-right Les Républicains, or LR party. He left Les Républicains but never joined the governing centrist La République En Marche. The announcement came days after Philippe was re-elected mayor of Le Havre, with a large majority. There have been persistent reports since the end of France's strict 2-month lockdown in May that Macron would reshuffle his government in an attempt to reboot his presidency, and speculation that Philippe may be replaced as prime minister. That's the update for France, and back to you, Alma.
All right. Merci, Aliyah, and you stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you, Alma, and stay safe also. For Eagle News Broadcast International from Paris, France, I am Aliyah Garcia. We live in interesting times.
And the United States notched more than 53,000 new COVID-19 cases in 24 hours on Thursday. Local time, a tally by Johns Hopkins University showed a new one-day record as infections surged around the country. The Baltimore-based university's tracker showed 53,069 more cases as of 8:30 p.m. Friday GMT, bringing the total number of cases since the pandemic reached the U.S. to 2,735,339. The university also recorded a further 649 fatalities, bringing the total death toll to 128,677. The second consecutive day of a record high case count came as the U.S., the hardest hit country in the world in the coronavirus pandemic, headed into the long July 4th holiday weekend. Florida is a key focus of public health experts worried about a surge in southern and western U.S. states, and it now has more than 169,000 cases. Governor Ron DeSantis blamed the rise on social interactions among young people gathering at parties, beaches, bars, swimming pools, and elsewhere, as well as a more robust testing program. In Texas, where more than 2,500 people have died, Governor Greg Abbott ordered people in counties with 20 or more cases to wear masks and banned gatherings of more than 10 people. Let's listen in.
In the past few weeks, there has been a swift and a substantial spike in COVID-19 cases. So we need to refocus on slowing the spread. But this time, we want to do it without closing down Texas again. COVID-19 is not going away. In fact, it's getting worse. Now more than ever, action by everyone is needed until treatments are available for COVID-19. But of course, one of the best ways to keep businesses open while also slowing the spread is for everyone to wear a face covering like this when they go out. That is why today I am issuing a face covering requirement for all counties with more than 20 COVID cases. This safe standard requires Texans to wear masks in public spaces with certain common sense exceptions. Now, I know that wearing a face covering is not the convenient thing to do, but I also know that wearing a face covering will help us to keep Texas open for business, and it will help Texans earn the paycheck they need.
About 20% of COVID-19 patients develop severe disease, according to the World Health Organization. Let's listen in.
Confirm that over time, the severity of disease seems to be standing with what we initially saw in China, which means about 20% of patients, so a subgroup of patients are developing severe disease and a smaller subgroup developing critical disease. So I think that's what we have learned and confirmed over time and seen that same type of breakdown in different countries.
What we know is that this virus transmits through respiratory droplets from an infected person, most often when they have symptoms, but it can happen just before they develop symptoms or right at the time of them developing symptoms, meaning they're very, very mild. And it can happen when people are infected and don't develop symptoms at all.
Meanwhile, the European Commission, the bloc's executive arm, authorized the use of antiviral drug remdesivir to treat the new coronavirus. Washington authorized the emergency use of the medicine, which was originally intended as a treatment for Ebola, on May 1, followed by several Asian nations, including Japan and South Korea. The green light comes on the recommendation of the European Medicines Agency, which gave its conditional authorization last week for the treatment of patients above 12 years of age who are suffering from pneumonia and require extra oxygen. The research published in the leading journal, the New England Journal of Medicine in May, showed that infections of remdesivir speeded patient recovery compared with a placebo. On average, it reduced patients' hospital stays from 15 days to 11. Universal Studios in Singapore reopened this week after being closed for nearly 3 months as the city-state implemented restrictions to slow the spread of the coronavirus. Take a look.
I feel that it's a good step forward. People are becoming more optimistic that they have places to go to and not be cooped up every day at home. So I think as long as people are being safe, it's nice to take your mind off real-world issues from time to time.
But it's there's not many people, it's all really clean and it's nice and looks nice, and it's just happy that to be back, and everything is really, really taken good care of. Rows between everywhere, so it's really safe also.
Obviously with the opening a couple of days ago, we thought we'd come while it's sort of still quite empty, and thought we'd try and make the most of it whilst there's not too many people here.
Now, they've been closed for nearly 3 months since the start of Singapore's circuit breaker on April 7. Resorts World Sentosa's Universal Studios Singapore reopened, but with up to 25% capacity at any one time, and features such as street entertainment and shows will remain closed. Marina Bay Sands opened its Art Science Museum, Sands Sky Park Observation Deck, with similar conditions. The reduced crowds were a pleasant surprise to many visitors who enjoyed a shorter waiting time of up to 10 minutes and the opportunity to go on their favorite rides multiple times. Antimicrobial coating was applied on all frequently touched surfaces. 3D glasses were disinfected after every use, and all rides were wiped down before another group arrived. Prince Andrew is bewildered by claims he's stonewalling a U.S. investigation into the alleged sex trafficking of minors by British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell and the late financier Jeffrey Epstein. His legal team said on Friday Maxwell was arrested and charged by U.S. authorities on Thursday after spending months living in seclusion. She faces up to 35 years in prison if convicted of all charges. Let's listen in.
Today we announced charges against Ghislaine Maxwell for helping Jeffrey Epstein sexually exploit and abuse multiple minor girls from the period of 1994 through 1997. Maxwell has been taken into custody early this morning in New Hampshire and will be presented this afternoon before a magistrate judge in the District of New Hampshire. Maxwell was among Epstein's closest associates and helped him exploit girls who were as young as 14 years old. Maxwell played a critical role in helping Epstein to identify, befriend, and groom minor victims for abuse. In some cases, Maxwell participated in the abuse herself. In addition to allegedly enabling and participating in the sexual abuse of young victims, Maxwell compounded her crimes by repeatedly lying in 2016 when she was questioned under oath. And we have charged those lies in 2 perjury counts. She pretended to be a woman they could trust. All the while, she was setting them up to be sexually abused by Epstein and in some cases by Maxwell herself. Today, after many years, Ghislaine Maxwell finally stands charged for her role in these crimes.
Early this morning, Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested in Bradford, New Hampshire by FBI special agents and NYPD detectives from the FBI NYPD Crimes Against Children Task Force. Our team from New York was assisted by special agents assigned to our Boston, Newark, New Haven, and Albany field offices. We've been discreetly keeping tabs on Maxwell's whereabouts as we worked this investigation, and more recently we learned she had slithered away to a gorgeous property in New Hampshire, continuing to live a life of privilege while her victims live with the trauma inflicted upon them years ago.
The daughter of late newspaper baron Robert Maxwell is believed to have introduced Prince Andrew to Epstein, a convicted pedophile, and U.S. authorities want to speak to the prince about their relationship. Prince Andrew has since faced claims from U.S. prosecutors that he's avoiding their request for a face-to-face interview. The 60-year-old Duke of York has strenuously denied claims he had sex with a 17-year-old girl procured by Epstein. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the British government had not been approached by U.S. authorities with requests to either assist their investigation or to help arrange an interview with the prince. Maxwell was arrested and charged by U.S. authorities on Thursday after spending months living in seclusion. She faces up to 35 years in prison if convicted of all charges. Epstein committed suicide in jail while awaiting trial last year, and Queen Elizabeth, its second son, quit his royal duties after he defended his relationship with the late financier. In time of physical and emotional distance, we give importance to the unsung service delivered by our frontliners, our news correspondents positioned all over the world. Without them, we would not have the eagle-eye focus on the facts of this pandemic and its continuing repercussions on our lives. To our international correspondents, thank you for staying in touch with our viewers. Stay safe, protect yourselves and others. Good night, but before I go, I would like to greet Brother TJ Orosa, our chairman. A very happy birthday po. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.